This video is going to cover an intermediate image gallery. We're going to start with the image gallery that we created in the beginner version. If you have not watched that video or don't have that finished version, you should stop and go back and watch that video and create that version because we'll be starting with that piece. We will have the same functionality, but what I want you to notice is there is not a page refresh. And so what we're going to do is use PHP to create some JavaScript that will allow the JavaScript to very quickly change the categories and images on the page without a page refresh. So that's going to be our primary difference between last time and this time. I'm going to start with some modifications from the last video. Our open and close dbcon, I'm gonna copy those and paste them, and I'm gonna rename those. Now I'm gonna put MySQLi, so it's close MySQLi connection, and then this one's going to be open MySQLi connection. And I'm going to grab those two and bring them over here into Dreamweaver. Most of the, if you've watched the other videos and I haven't used MySQLi yet, there's not a lot of changeover. There's a few changes, and other than that, it's all exactly the same. For this one, all we need to do is put an I there, so it's MySQLi underscore close. Hit save and close that one. This one's got just a little bit more to it, not a lot. This @db line stays pretty much the same, but this right here, instead of MySQL pconnect, it's going to be MySQLi. You'll notice that we lost the green color, and we need to get rid of the P. And now we're back. So we've got MySQLi underscore connect, and then your database, your login, and my password is scrolled off the screen. Those would stay the same. In the next one, we do a database selection. So again, it's going to be a MySQLi there, and then on this MySQL underscore error, it's also going to be a MySQLi underscore error. Now the primary difference in switching to MySQLi is that in a few places, rather than only listing the name of the database here, we also have to pass the connection as well. So I put a $DB comma, and then I leave the name of my database there. And then this if statement remains the same. So I'll go ahead and save that. We are going to start with that beginner file. So if I come back to my image gallery that we were working on, I'm going to copy this beginner file and paste it. And I'm going to rename it to image gallery underscore intermediate. And then I'm going to open that intermediate file. And so we'll start with the product of that beginner video, and we'll just make modifications to it to use a lot of JavaScript instead. Now, if you'll recall from the last video and using the PHP, because there was a page refresh each time, the first thing we did on the page was grab that category ID. But this time there's not going to be a page refresh. So this part right here we're going to get rid of. There's the page loads once, and unless you type the URL again or you navigate away and come back, it's not going to reload again. So we're going to get rid of that PHP that's up at the top. I'm going to change the word beginner to intermediate in a couple places. There in the title and down here in the H1. And then I want to go ahead and make sure that we make the change to those two files that we just modified. So instead of open dbcon, we're going to have open MySQL icon, and then I'm going to go down and find the close, and I'm going to modify that one just so I don't forget about them. So it's close MySQL I connection. So I've got those taken care of. I'll go ahead and save that. Now there's a decent amount that's in here that we're going to keep, and then there's a lot of new that we'll wind up adding, but it'll wind up being maybe close to twice as long as it currently is by the time we get to the end. So this first part here, inside of this first div, ID equals nav, we'll look at it first, and we'll still be selecting category ID and cat name from gallery category. We're going to use those same two database tables that we had there. I'm going to make a modification because in this example we've got a couple of different queries that are going to be happening. So what I want to do is change $SQL in this first part to be $cat SQL for category SQL statement. So that's going to change here and here. And then I'm also going to wind up changing result to cat result. So that'd be here, here, and here. And again down here. And likewise, my num results is going to become cat underscore num results in 3 places there. And then my $row is going to wind up being cat row that's there. So we'll do those. Right now I want to get rid of a piece that we no longer need. So this piece of PHP again relies on that top piece that we already deleted. So this $cat ID we're not using anymore because again there's not going to be a page refresh. So that line's going to go back to how it looked when we took it from the previous page before we did the beginner. So we've got the trim with category ID and category name. So let's go ahead and make these changes in this top section. Again, I'll highlight this. Here's the closing tag. This is the space that we're working in. I'm not going to venture down into this below. So just stay within this top area here. So I'm going to start with $SQL, and I'm going to change that one to be cat SQL, capital S. So I do lowercase cat, capital SQL. You'll see that that one's highlighted. It says I have 5 on the page, but again, I'm not going to go below that div I had highlighted. So I'm going to replace that one and replace that one. And I'm already down here, so I'm just going to stop there. I'm only looking at what's above there for right now. So that's we had 2 places that we changed that category SQL. The next one that we encounter is this result. And that one we're going to change to cat result. And you can see we've already got some highlighted here on the page. So it says there's 10, and once again I imagine some of those are down below. That one's in a comment, and then that category result there, that if empty, now we've got the num rows there, and then we're still inside of this ID equals nav, and there's a result, so I'm going to replace that. But now I'm down here in the image container, so I'm going to stop. So I've got category SQL, which was passed, and the result comes back to category result. We check to see if category result is empty. If not, we get the number of rows from it. And down here we do a fetch array for category result. The next thing that comes up is num results. So we'll go ahead and address that. And again, it's going to be cat underscore num underscore results. And so you can see the first one there is highlighted for us. It says there's 6 of them here, but same as the others. We're probably not going to change them all. So we'll change that to category num results. There, and then in this for loop, which is still inside of div id equals nav, replace that, and then it jumps us down, and we don't want to touch those just yet. So we'll be making different changes down there. The next one is going to be the row. So here we've got category row. That will be changed here. So again, I'm going to start with $row, and this is mostly just to reduce ambiguity as we move forward, because we'll have a couple different of these running side by side, and rather than having row and row 2, for this example I thought it'd be easier to have a little more definition there. So we'll replace that one, replace that one. There's 2 inside the trim, and then it jumps us down and we're going to stop. So again, I'm only looking at that part that's inside of id equals nav, that div there. And that changes all of our variable names to be a little bit more descriptive. Now, we've got to come back to using MySQL I. So the first instance that we have on this page is this MySQL underscore query. And this is one of those that if we use MySQL I, and I put the I there, we also have to pass the instance of the database connection to it. So it becomes, it changes like this, where we've got MySQL I underscore query, and then we've got $db, that's from open MySQL icon, comma, and then our category SQL, which comes from here. So that's a pretty simple change. The others are even simpler. We just put an I in. So MySQL I num rows and MySQL I fetch array. And that will change us over. And the reason for that is because the MySQL underscore has been deprecated. So at some point it will begin to not function. So those changes will be commonplace for you. This onChange event will change. This is a form submission here, but again, we are not submitting the form. Submitting the form would be a page refresh. So instead, we are going to call a function that we have not created yet, but we'll go ahead and put it in there. It's going to be called getCategory with a capital C. It has open and close parentheses and ends with a semicolon there. So this is the select, so it's the drop-down menu. And so every time it changes, it's going to call this JavaScript function. And again, we haven't created it yet, so it's not going to work just yet. Inside of that select, we already had an option with all, but the value was empty. And what we're going to do for this exercise is we're actually going to make the value equal all. So again, a lot of little changes that's going to get us set up here. Once we've, I think we're close to finished with this section, we'll start working on creating some JavaScript here. So as we move down, this div image container is actually going to become a separate piece in this one, and it's going to be empty. And so what I'm going to do is scroll down here and I'm going to grab the closing div that matches up with that, and I'm going to cut it to get rid of it, and I'm going to come up here and paste. So now I've got an open and close div for that image container, and the rest of this is just going to remain floating for the time being. We'll use a lot of that later, but right in here we're going to have some script tags. So I'll do an open script, type equals, I'll type a J to highlight the JavaScript one. I'll go down a few lines and I'll close that script out. And Dreamweaver really likes to screw with the formatting there for some reason. Inside of here, what we're going to do is instead of every time we select the dropdown, making a call to the database and then changing what's visible, on that first page load, we are going to select everything from the database that we could need in this image gallery, and we're going to store it into arrays. And then based on what's chosen for display, we will change the array that we use. So that's the approach that we're going to take. There are, as with anything in programming, many various ways to approach it. So this one's going to get you a pretty good, some pretty good exercise with arrays and hopefully understanding them better. So we're going to start with having a variable called all that's going to be an array of all of the images. So we'll create that. And then we have to use PHP to write much of the rest of that array creation. So we've been using PHP to create and manipulate HTML. This is going to use PHP to create and manipulate JavaScript. And then that JavaScript in turn is going to create and manipulate things on the web browser. So we need to put in some PHP. So I'll put my open and close delimiters there. And what we'll wind up doing is looping through the categories that we already had from up above. And then once we have that set up, we're going to nest a loop inside of that in order to grab all of the images for each category. Let's go ahead and save this right now. I expect there to be errors on the page, but I've saved it. We'll see. Let me bring that. Okay, so now we're ready. So I've got this intermediate file. I need to drag and drop it. So I'm pushing it up to the server. You'll remember that we created these two files, the MySQLi connections. I'm going to grab both of those and I'm going to drop them into the includes folder on the server. Come back here. And so I've got some things going on here, but what I'm really interested in is the source. And so right here is where we're going to be working. And we're going to write some PHP, but you're not going to actually see the results of that PHP until we refresh the page in the browser and then view the source after it's been loaded in the browser. So I wanted to go ahead and start showing you where we're going to be looking. So let's go ahead and come back to Dreamweaver. And let's get started. We're going to, again, reuse some of this from above. Now, because I've already looped through these categories once, I need to make another call to refresh category result. And so I'm going to copy and paste that there. So it's just going to resend that query. And that way, because I've already used MySQL fetch array and I got to the end of that, so the easiest thing is to just grab that and get myself a fresh set. I also want to create a counter variable, and I'm going to call it allIndex. And it's going to start at 0, and it's going to represent the index of the array for all of the images. So it would wind up being all 0, all 1, all 2, all 3, and so on. After that, we're going to use a loop. Now up here, I've used for I equals, and we go through cat num results. I'll go ahead and I'll just copy this first part. Now we've got our for loop lined up here. And I'll put end for loop for the categories. Now because I've got multiple for loops and there's more yet to come, instead of using I on this one, I'm going to use J. So I've got for J equal to 0, as long as J is less than the number of records for categories, increment J each time through the loop. And then we have quite a bit more to do inside of this space here. So we use cat row to fetch the first array out of there. And then what we want to do is create a new array for each category. So in this example, there are 4 categories. There's fixtures, furniture, accessories, and household items. So what we want to do is actually write the JavaScript to create those. It's going to look, let me back up, it's going to look just like this statement, but we have to dynamically create them. So we start with var, and then what we need is the name of the category ID. The only way we can get that is with PHP. So I'll do a PHP echo here, and what I want to echo out is the trimmed value for cat row category ID. So there I'm just writing out the category ID to that space. And on the other side of that PHP closing delimiter, I'm going to do equals new array. Now we've done a little bit there, and what we want to do is save that and load it. I see a red mark here. I've forgotten a small but incredibly important piece. We need to close our PHP up above and reopen our PHP below. So what I've done is I forgot to put in my closing PHP right here and my opening PHP right here. This word is JavaScript. Then we have PHP, and then this is JavaScript. The reason it's JavaScript is because it's between the opening and closing script tags. So now we want to save this and move it up to the server again. So I'll come back here and refresh this page. Again, I don't care about the errors right now. What I do care about is viewing the page source. And now when we come down here, the last time we looked at this, we had this one. And now we have that one plus accessories, fixtures, furniture, and household items are all new arrays that we're going to be using. Now that we've created those variables for the arrays, what we can do is write some more PHP to populate those arrays with image IDs, which are image names or file names, so that we can then use those later. So that's the next step. So now we'll be adding some more after this opening PHP, but still inside of that for loop. And what we're going to do is, since we've done the categories, now we want to do the images. The easiest thing might be to just come down here and grab this part right here. So I'm just going to cut it out of there. I'll leave the rest down there and paste it in up here. Now I don't need this if-else. I really only need one select statement, and I need the select statement that uses the category ID. So select star from gallery image where category ID equals, but again I said we're no longer using this $cat ID. So instead of that, what I need is this right here. So I'm going to select the trim cat row category ID. Make sure you get that closing parenthesis there to match up with the trim. And then instead of this right here in between those periods, I'm going to have that in between the periods. And that's the SQL line that we need. Now once again, rather than having multiple variables called SQL and so on, we're going to make modifications, and again we're just looking at this area right here. So this, instead of being $SQL, is going to be IMG SQL. And then right here it would also be IMG SQL with capital S. This, instead of just being result, is going to wind up being IMG result. And then we're going to use IMG result. I'll copy that. And down here in the empty statement, I'm going to paste it. And over here in num rows, I'm going to paste it. And then instead of it being just num results, it's going to be IMG underscore on both of those. So now we've got an image SQL, and you'll see those two places highlighted. And then we've got image result. You'll see those three places highlighted, and you'll see these two for image num results. And then just as we've been changing the last assignment over to MySQLi, we're going to do that again. So I put MySQLi there. And again, the underscore query requires that you send the database connection. So I'll put $DB, comma. And then down here for num rows, I'm going to put an I in there for MySQLi, and that'll finish that one. So now I'm inside a for loop, and I've selected the first category, and then I'm using that category ID to select all of the images within that category. And now what I want to do is loop through all of the images in that one category and add them to that array. So I need a nested for loop. And I'm just going to write this one out rather than copying. So we do a for. And inside of this, the last one I used was a K, or was a J, so I'm going to use a K here. So for K equal to 0, semicolon, as long as K is less than, and this time it's going to be image num results. So I'll do $img, and I want it to be image num results there, semicolon, increment k each time through the loop, so a k++. So you can begin to see why I've added the img and the cat in front of a lot of these as we go through here. So now inside of here, just like we have a cat row up here, fetching that, we need an image row fetching the next one. So I'll do a $img row and set that equal to MySQLi underscore fetch array. So you can see that one there. And what we want to pass in is the image result. So I'm going to copy that and paste it into image row. And I need a semicolon. Now once I've done that, I can begin to build my array. And so it's going to look similar to what we did up above, where we stopped our PHP, we wrote out this variable to create a new array item, and we began our PHP once again. So it's going to be just like that. So below this image row, I'm going to stop my PHP and then begin my PHP again. And inside of that space, that is JavaScript. And the reason it is JavaScript and not HTML is because we are inside of a script tag. So whatever I put here has to be JavaScript code, otherwise it's going to fail. So what I want to do now is each of these arrays is actually named what the category ID. So that makes it easy as a user adds new categories or changes the names of categories, this page will just adjust automatically. It's not hard-coded. So what I want to put is again, echo out that category ID, but this time I need square brackets around it. So what I'll do is just come up here. I need to start with this statement right here. So I'm going to copy that whole PHP. So I start with this echo, and I'm going to give myself just a little bit of space in there so you can see those two line up that are highlighted. And what I want to do is some concatenation. So after that category ID, I want to concatenate on a square bracket, just the opening square bracket. I want to concatenate on k. So the first time through the loop it'll be 0, next time 1, next time 2. So that will be my array index. And I want to concatenate onto that the closing square bracket. You can see those two match up even though they're in double quotes there. So I've written that out, and then outside of that PHP I need an equal sign, and that equal sign is JavaScript because it's outside of the PHP. And then I need a value and a semicolon. So this part right here is JavaScript, but the value that I need inside of those double quotes comes from PHP. So once again, I need to do an echo statement. And again, I need to trim the value pulled from the database. And what I need is the image row image ID. So there I've got image row. If I highlight that, we'll see we've pulled it from here. So I've got image row and then the image ID from select star from gallery image. And you'll remember that what I used for an image ID was the actual file name. So what you're going to see is like furniture1.jpg and so on for an image ID. because it cannot repeat, right? If it repeats, then it's overwriting the file in the directory. So that makes a nice unique identifier. So we're going to stop there. We're going to save it, and again, we will push it up to the server. I'll close this source, refresh this page, right-click, view page source, and now we'll scroll down here and have a look at this. You'll remember last time we had all equals new array and accessories equals new array and fixtures equals new array, and now we've got all of these in between. So we did a $cat row category ID to get this word, and then we concatenated a square bracket, the $K, the closing square bracket, and then we put an equal sign in JavaScript and the quotation marks in JavaScript. But then we did a $image row for the image ID to grab that from the database. And so now we've got all of these populated. You'll see that all four of them are populated, but this one is not. So what we want to do is come back and also populate that one at the same time. So we'll do it in the same space here. All is a unique case. So to some degree we can hard code it, because whether there's no categories or a bunch of categories, all will remain the same for our purposes. So I have all with square brackets, but then what goes inside of that square bracket is the all index that we created up above, equals, and I have a set of double quotes here, just like the last one, and a semicolon on the end. So now what we need is this right here is in JavaScript. You see we ended the PHP here, we began the PHP here. So this right here is in JavaScript. This array index, all index, is in PHP. So I need to echo that out. So in here, I do an open and close PHP with an echo statement, and I need to echo out all index. It will start at 0, and then it needs to increment. And we don't have that because it's incrementing k and it's incrementing j, but we don't have anything for incrementing all index yet. So we'll do that between this opening PHP here and this curly bracket. You want it to be inside of this for loop. If it's outside of the for loop, it won't work. And so we just do an all index plus plus there, and that will increment it each time that there is an image that goes through. And we'll see the results of that when we get to when we get back to the source to look at it. Now what I want on the in between these quotes is the same thing that I have between these. So I'm actually just going to come down to the line below, and from double quote to double quote I'm going to copy that whole piece and I'm going to paste it between these quotation marks and save it there. So there we've got our end loop for our categories. Here is our end loop for our images. I'll save that, and we're going to push that up to the server once again. I'm going to close this source page. I'm going to refresh this page once again. Right click, view page source, and now you'll see how it's changed. So in addition to accessory 0, there's an all 0, all 1, all 2, and you'll notice once we get out of accessories, we have accessories 10 and all 10, we go to fixtures and we have fixtures 0, but all continues to count, 11, 12, 13. We come down here, all is at 21, fixtures at 10. We go to furniture, all is at 22, furniture at 0, till we get all the way to the end, where all is at 46, for a total of 47 images. So we have our individual arrays, and then we have our big array that holds everything that's there. Now we've finished creating the arrays, so the rest is a matter of using the arrays. What I'm going to do here is just inside of this closing PHP, I'm going to give myself a PHP comment that says end creating category arrays. And that's just a note to look for, so it'll help us out. Now I'm inside of the script tag, so I'm going to be writing some JavaScript here. You'll notice that the closing PHP is just above. So we've got a little bit of JavaScript to write. You'll remember that we changed the onChange event of that form. If we come back up here, onChange equals getCategory. Let's go ahead and create that function. So JavaScript function called getCategory. So there we have our open and close. It does not accept a parameter, so nothing needs to go in between the parentheses there. But inside of this JavaScript function, when that select dropdown changes, what we want to do is get the new value. So I'm going to create a JavaScript variable here called HTML select. And again, there's multiple ways to do this. I'm going to use JavaScript rather than using jQuery. We don't have a whole lot of this, so jQuery is not going to speed it up that much. So I'll do a document.getElementById. And what we are looking for is the name of that select, that HTML select. So here's our select, open to close. And I misspoke. We are looking for the ID of it, which is the same as the name, but we are looking for the ID of it, cat dropdown. So that's going to grab our select element and store it into that variable that we have. And we're going to create another JavaScript variable, and I'm going to call it chosen value. Set that equal to HTML select dot options square brackets I'll finish this out, and then we'll fill in the square brackets. After that, it's a dot value semicolon. Now the index for the options is going to be HTML select dot selected index. So we've got HTML select dot options with square brackets. The index is HTML select dot selected index. So that will be, in our case, we've got 5 things in there, so it'll be 0 through 4. And then dot value, which will give us the value equals. So if all is chosen, it will give us all. Otherwise, it will give us, here's the value equals, it will give us the category ID. So that's what we're going for there, the category ID. Now what I'm going to do is create a new array. It's essentially a temporary array. So that when I figure out which of these category arrays I'm using, I can just store that into my array and then pass my array to another function to display all of the images. So once we've done that, we're going to again use some PHP here to help us write the next part of the JavaScript. So again, I've got my opening and closing PHP delimiters in there. And once again, I want to loop through the categories. So I need that cat result, not the image result. I need the cat result right here. So I need cat result equals MySQLi query, and I pass it the cat SQL, and we don't need to rewrite that because that hasn't changed. It's up higher in the code. And then I need another for loop. Now the last time I used K, I don't like using L because it can be pretty confusable. So I'll go ahead and start my for loop here. And I'm going to use M. As long as M is less than, again, cat num results. Increment M each time through the loop. So now inside of this, we would again use MySQLi fetch array. And this is going to be cat row, not image row. So that's going to be the same as this line up here that I'll grab. And again, all we're doing in these two statements is just a quick reset of the values. We already looped through them up above using fetch array, so we're actually at the end of the result set. And this is just a quick way to get back to the beginning of the result set. So that's why we're repeating those lines. Now inside of here, what I need to create is a JavaScript if-else-if structure that chooses the correct category to store into my array. So I need to create, actually in this case I need a boundary case of when m is equal to 0, and then I need an else if m is greater than 0 but less than the number of results. So in PHP, I'll have an if statement that checks to see if m is equal to 0. And an else if that checks to see if m is less than the number of results. So if it's 0, then it's a special case. So now inside of here, what we actually need to place is some JavaScript inside of both of those bodies, the if and the else if bodies. And so we'll go ahead and do the if first. So inside of there, we will put some PHP. And inside of that PHP now, oh, sorry. Put the wrong delimiters. Close PHP. So right here is JavaScript in between those two delimiters. So this is PHP, stops PHP, This right here would be JavaScript because I'm inside of a script tag. So in here, I need a JavaScript if statement. And this if statement is going to be looking for the chosen value, which is right here. So I'll say if the chosen value is equal to all. And again, the chosen value comes from that select drop-down menu. So there's options there. So if it's equal to all, again, all is a special case. It's going to be there no matter how many categories are there. So I can hard code this one and not mess anything up. And then this is going to be an else if. And I'll say else if, again, the chosen value, this time is equal to something specific. And that something specific is going to be the category ID, because we use the category IDs to write that select drop-down up above. So again, it's going to be those category IDs. So inside of here, we use PHP to write out or echo that category ID. And again, we'll use trim because it's coming from the database. And we'll use cat row. And we need category ID. So if the chosen value is the category ID, then I need my array is equal to that category ID, but without the double quotes. So up here it's comparing text, but here when I write it out, it's going to be the name of an array. So here we have double quotes and here we do not. We'll see the result of it when we save this. So then we've got else if m is less than the number of records that are there. So what would go there is essentially the same thing, except for that if is not there. So I'm going to copy this entire piece here, and I'm going to paste it here. But I'm going to get rid of that if, and we've got else if the chosen value is again equal to the category ID, then make my array equal to that. So what I want to do now is save this and push it up to the server. Refresh this page. Right click, view the page source. So again, here's my select dropdown. My onChange event calls the function getCategory. You can see the values are all, and then accessories, fixtures, furniture. Those are the category IDs. We go through this long list of creating our arrays, and then we get down here to function getCategory. And we might be able to fix some of this formatting here. But we've got myArray equals new array, and if the chosen value is all, then myArray equals all. If it's accessories, then myArray equals accessories, and so on. And it looks like I've forgotten a semicolon on each of those. There should be one here. So let's come back and see if I can dress that up and make it look a little bit nicer. After this closing PHP, I'm going to put an enter there. After this closing PHP, I'm going to put an enter there. Right here, where it says myArray equals, and all the way on the outside of that PHP, I need a semicolon. And the same thing down here on the outside of that closing PHP, I need a semicolon. So let's go ahead and save that and push it up again. close this, refresh the page, right click, view source, all the way down. So now it looks a little bit better. So we put those line breaks in, and we've got our semicolons at the end like we're supposed to. So we create this new array, and if the chosen value from that select dropdown up above, if that value is all, then make my array equal to the all array, which is right here. Else if it's accessories, else if it's fixtures, else if furniture, else if household items. If it's household items, take the household items array, which is right here, and store it into my array. So that's what we're doing each time get category is called. Now the last thing that we need inside of this get category function is a call to another function. So just inside of this closing in function get category, I'm going to put display images with parentheses, and I want to pass it my array. So again, this is JavaScript because we closed our PHP right here. So this is JavaScript. This is the closing tag for the JavaScript get category function. Here's our closing script tag. And what we need here is a new function called display images. Now this accepts a parameter. You can see right above I passed in a parameter. I'm going to call it current array. So that's when it gets passed in, it's going to be called the current array, and that's what we're going to use. And so in this we're going to make use of some of the stuff we left down here and rework it in a JavaScript fashion. So let's go ahead and grab some of that. Some of it we need, some of it we don't. Really, let's go ahead and get rid of this part, and I just want to save the div part that's there. So I'm going to get rid of that. And this right here, you can see my line highlighted. That's the closing curly bracket for the for loop that I just deleted. And then we've got our include statement there that we want to keep. But this right here, I'm going to cut it, and I'm going to bring these closer together now so that we realize that our closing include is down there. Inside of our display images here, I'm going to paste this in, and we're going to have to rework this so that it becomes what we need it to be. We're going to store all of this HTML into a JavaScript variable, and then we're going to pass that variable to the inner HTML of the image container, which we put up here empty. Right now it's empty, so on first page load, sure, it's empty. But every time we change the drop-down list, it's not empty. So the first thing we want to do is clear the image container. So again, I'll use document.getElementById. And we'll access the inner HTML, and we'll set it equal to the empty string. So that will ensure that each time I display a new set of images, rather than appending and making that scroll bar longer and longer and longer, I'm actually clearing it out and starting starting from scratch. I'm going to create a JavaScript variable called new div, set it equal to the empty string there. And then what I'm going to do is loop through the current array. So again, we have my array, which was passed in, and my array is either all of the images, or it's just the furniture, or it's just the fixtures, or just the accessories, or just the household items. So it's one of those 5 things in that current array. So what I need is a for loop once again. And the last time I think I used m. I'm going to skip a couple letters and I'm going to use p. So I'll do a $P equal to 0 as long as p is less than, here we use current array dot length. Increment p each time through the loop. So that's just a little bit different rather than it's just like saying as long as it's less than the number of records. You're using the current array dot length, and the length tells us how many instances there are within the array. So now inside of here we're going to use new div. We'll set it equal to the empty string there, and the first thing that needs to go inside of there, we'll keep each of these lines just how they are. I'm going to take that first line only, and I'm going to cut it. I'm going to put it in between these double quotes, and I'm going to paste it. Now the problem is that I have nested double quotes, and so this style equal needs to use a single quote. So I will do a backspace and then a single quote, and then all the way at the end I'll do a backspace and a single quote. And now you can see the entire thing is one color, just how we want it. If it makes a little bit better sense, let's do new div. This time it's not equals, it is plus equals. That's very important. If you forget that, it's not going to work for you. This time before we move it, I'm going to change this one to a single equals and just make my way down through there. Now we're actually going to be changing this part, but that's okay. So now I'll take this entire image and cut it, and I'll put it in between those double quotes there. But there's no PHP in this part. So this PHP echo part here, we don't need. And then this concatenation's not going to work. So that entire piece, basically what we're going to be left with for right now is that thumb/th underscore. So you should have source equals with single quotes thumb/th underscore. Now what we're going to do is concatenate in some JavaScript. Now concatenation in JavaScript is done using a plus sign. So what we'll want to do is inside of this single quote, because the file name has to be inside that single quote, we'll do some concatenation, and we approach it the same way that we approach concatenation in PHP. I'll do a set of double quotes, and inside of that set of double quotes I'll do 2 pluses, and inside of those pluses I'll use current array with the index of p. So now that's going to write out the file name that is within the current array at index p, and it will wind up being a th underscore file name. And we'll continue down through there because this is going to be a similar thing with each of these. So this ID equals is actually going to require this same concatenation that we did here. So from double quote to double quote here, I'm going to go ahead and copy. Actually, let's get rid of the echoes. And then let's change these to single quotes. Sometimes Dreamweaver is a little too helpful. Now, this concatenation right here from double quote to double quote with the plus signs in the current array $p, let's copy that. And let's replace that open and close PHP. So from the less than to the greater than there. Again and again. We come up here and we say new div. Again, it's plus equals. If you forget the plus, it's not going to work. We have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines. So we've got 1 there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to take this break tag and cut it, put it in the next one. I'm going to take this anchor tag, cut it, put it in the next one. Put this standalone pipe in the next one. Take this anchor tag, put it in the next one. Take this anchor tag, put it there, and then this closing div tag, and place it there. And so now what we've got is some properly formatted material. So this is the same method that we used before. We have an open div to a closed div, and we use a style with float left, and we put a break, and we've got view, edit, and delete below each individual image. And so for each image in the array, we're going to create this div, and then we take that div and we add it to the inner HTML of image container. So inside of the for loop, document get element by ID, grab image container, and then set the inner HTML. But again, it's not just an equal sign, it's a plus equals. You are appending to it. And you append new div with a semicolon there. So that's going to finish out our display images function. We have our closing for loop there. We have our closing display images function. And again, let me talk through this one more time. So we grab the image container, we set the HTML inside of it to be empty. We create this new variable that we're going to use all the way down through here. And then we dynamically write HTML, so an opening div, here's the image tag, a break, an anchor tag, and so on, and until we get to the closing div. And we concatenate in the file name that we are currently on. So the first time through this loop, it'll be fixtures1.jpg in that spot, that spot, that spot, that spot. The next time through, it'll be fixtures2.jpg, and so on. When that each time for fixtures 1, we append with a plus equals to the image container. And so we do that for however many images there are. Down here, still inside of the script tag, we have a couple of things that we want to put. So on the first page load, we want to do a couple of things. I'm going to do a document.getElementById and select the category dropdown. And just make sure that the selected index is at the top and doesn't for some reason load to a different one. And then, because nothing will display on the page until that display images function is called, I'm going to go ahead and call display images with all of the images. And again, this all is a variable that we created up here, which is an array that contains all of the images. So when the page first loads, I manually call display images here, which passes in all of the images, and it will populate that div. Let's go ahead and save that and push it up. Get rid of this, refresh the page. So now we've got images loading once again. But let's right-click, View Page Source. Here's our select with our options. Here's all of our arrays that we build on the fly. And if we were to add another category and a bunch of images to that database, as long as they're in the database, this will automatically add another array and work just fine. Here's our function getCategory, which chooses which one of those category arrays that we need. Down here, we call display images with all on that first page load, so it comes in here. We clear out the image container just in case there's something in it, and then we move through and we add each image one by one until we get this. When I select the drop down and go to accessories, you can see just those. Fixtures, furniture, household items, all. When I mouse over edit, you'll have to look down here at the bottom now. When I mouse over edit, you'll see edit image.php !id equals accessories5.jpg. Here's delete image.php !id equals accessories6.jpg. Here's the view image one with accessories3.jpg, and so on. So that has been a conversion to what I'd call an intermediate level of image gallery. So again, you'll notice there's not a page refresh. So watch up here. This doesn't spin. It doesn't flash up here. It's very quick because everything is already loaded onto the page. It's all in JavaScript. So all you're doing is just displaying and not displaying certain things. So again, a level ahead of beginner. So now we've got PHP and JavaScript working together. It can get confusing when you're using PHP to write JavaScript. It's important to remember that you can use PHP to write JavaScript, but you cannot do the other way around. PHP executes on the server, JavaScript executes on the client for the most part for what we do in here. So you cannot use JavaScript to create PHP because the PHP happens first. So hopefully you'll find that useful and find many other things that you can do now that you've gone through this exercise.